The world didn't end with a bang, it was taken silently. Cordyceps didn't just destroy humanity, it remade it. This is the story of what came after. Long before Cordyceps brain infection, CBI, claimed the world, its fungal tendrils were limited to ants, controlling their minds with precision and ruthlessness. It was a microscopic wonder, a parasite that did not kill its host immediately, but manipulated it to climb to higher ground, where its body became a spore-spewing beacon. For centuries it thrived quietly, unnoticed by humanity, operating within the shadows of nature. But Cordyceps was never static. It was a survivor, a master of adaptation. As the planet warmed and human expansion destroyed natural habitats, the fungus faced new pressures. Environmental shifts pushed it to evolve, and humanity, unaware of the role it played, provided the perfect conditions for this next stage. Deforestation brought humans closer to the fungal spores, while rising global temperatures pushed Cordyceps to adapt to hotter environments, making mammalian hosts viable targets. The shift from infecting ants to humans was as horrifying as it was inevitable. Scientists speculate that Cordyceps mutated due to environmental catalysts or an accidental exposure in a lab. Others whisper darker theories. Perhaps Cordyceps was always capable of infecting humans, waiting for the right evolutionary trigger. The early outbreak in South America, where agricultural workers first showed signs of infection, was dismissed as localized illness. But the spores spread faster than anyone imagined, and within weeks, the infection became unstoppable. Cordyceps wasn't just a parasite, it was a conqueror. It rewired the human brain, hijacking motor functions and erasing individuality. Victims became vessels, driven by the fungus to attack others and propagate its spread. The first wave of infections was characterized by chaos. Hospitals flooded with patients experiencing violent outbursts, governments scrambling to impose quarantines, and communities succumbing to the fungal plague one by one. And yet, the infection's evolution hinted at something deeper, more intelligent. Cordyceps didn't merely destroy its hosts, it transformed them. Its mutations became more complex, as if designed for specific purposes. Survivors began to ask questions. Was Cordyceps acting purely on instinct, or was there a guiding will behind its actions? Brain infection was far more than a disease. It was a systemic takeover of the human body, a masterstroke of biological manipulation. The fungus began by invading the brain, infiltrating the central nervous system with microscopic tendrils. The process was swift and horrifying. Within hours, victims lost control of their movements, their aggression spiked, and the fungus began to mold their behavior to suit its needs. The mechanism was terrifying in its simplicity. Cordyceps didn't replace the brain, it hijacked it. By secreting chemicals that altered neurotransmitters, it could suppress the victim's identity, reducing them to a shell of their former self. Survivors described infected individuals as having empty eyes, as if their souls had been hollowed out, leaving behind only the fungus's will. But Cordyceps didn't stop there. As the infection progressed, the fungus began to alter the host's body itself. Over time, fungal growths burst through the skin, hardening into plates that protected the host, while simultaneously aiding in its mobility and lethality. This armor-like growth was not random. It was evolution in action, each mutation serving a purpose in the fungus's grand design. The stages of infection reflected this sinister progression. Runners. The earliest stage, where the host retained much of their human appearance but displayed erratic, violent behavior. Runners were fast, relentless, and driven by a primal need to spread the infection. Their aggression was unmatched, but their humanity was still faintly visible, a tragic reminder of what they once were. Stalkers. As the infection deepened, fungal growths began to emerge, covering parts of the host's face and body. Stalkers gained a predatory cunning, using stealth to hunt survivors. Their movements were eerily calculated, as if guided by an intelligence beyond instinct. Clickers. At this stage, the fungus fully consumed the host's head, rendering them blind, but cordyceps adapted, granting them echolocation through the use of clicking sounds. These creatures were fearsome hunters, their haunting clicks a death knell for those who heard them. Bloaters. After years of infection, some hosts transformed into bloaters, hulking monstrosities covered in fungal armor. Bloaters were nearly impervious to conventional weapons and could release clouds of spores to spread the infection further. They represented the pinnacle of cordyceps' physical transformation, though survivors feared that worse mutations might still exist. Each stage was more than a biological progression. It was a statement of cordyceps' dominance. The fungus reshaped humanity in its image, erasing individuality and replacing it with unity under its control. Survivors who studied the infected began to notice disturbing patterns. The infected didn't attack randomly. They acted with purpose, often targeting areas where survivors gathered or stockpiled resources. Was this merely coincidence, or did cordyceps possess a form of intelligence, a hive mind guiding its infected soldiers? Perhaps the most chilling aspect of the infection was the spores. Invisible to the naked eye, they lingered in the air, turning entire regions into death zones. Survivors had to wear gas masks at all times, knowing that a single breath in a spore-filled area could seal their fate. The fungus's control extended beyond its hosts, dominating the very environment they inhabited. Buildings covered in fungal growths became traps for the unwary, and even the ground itself seemed alive with cordyceps' influence. The infection wasn't just a plague, it was a system, a new order imposed upon humanity. And as the survivors struggled to hold on to what remained of their world, cordyceps continued to spread, unstoppable and all-consuming. Cordyceps' brain infection was not content with mere survival, it sought perfection. Each stage of infection revealed a terrifyingly deliberate progression, as if cordyceps itself were a master sculptor, crafting humanity into forms that better served its purpose. From the frenzied runners to the towering bloaters, the infected represented more than mutations. They were milestones in the fungus's evolutionary conquest. At first, survivors assumed that the infected were mindless predators, but closer observation revealed unsettling patterns. Runners displayed rudimentary pack behavior, coordinating their attacks with unnerving precision. Stalkers hunted with calculated stealth, lying in wait for the perfect moment to strike. Even the monstrous bloaters, seemingly nothing more than fungal tanks, demonstrated a disturbing tendency to protect spore-filled areas, as if guarding cordyceps' sacred grounds. Yet it was the clickers that captured the survivors' imaginations and their fears. With their faces consumed by fungal plates, they were blind, but their echolocation gave them an almost supernatural ability to navigate and hunt. Survivors often debated whether clickers retained any trace of their former selves. Some claimed to have seen hesitation in their movements, as if a fragment of humanity still lingered beneath the fungal growths. Others believed this was simply cordyceps' way of mimicking human behavior to manipulate its prey. And then there were the bloaters, the apex predators of the infection's hierarchy. Covered in thick, armor-like fungal growths, they were nearly impervious to bullets. Bloaters didn't just kill, they infected, releasing clouds of spores to create new generations of infected. Their grotesque forms were both a warning and a promise. Cordyceps was always evolving, always adapting, and always ready to push its limits further. Among the infected, myths and legends began to emerge. Survivors whispered of shamblers, creatures that thrived in damp environments, spewing acidic spores that burned flesh and lungs alike. And then there was the Rat King, a monstrous amalgamation of infected bodies fused together, a grotesque symbol of cordyceps' relentless pursuit of unity. These special infected defied explanation, their existence raising chilling questions about cordyceps' capabilities. Was the fungus experimenting, testing new forms in its pursuit of perfection? Or were these mutations accidents, aberrations born of the apocalypse? Whatever the truth, One thing was clear: cordyceps was not a mindless plague. Its transformations were too precise, its mutations too purposeful. It was a force of nature, remaking the world in its image, one host at a time. Amid the chaos of the cordyceps pandemic, one anomaly stood out: Ellie, a girl immune to the infection. Her immunity was more than a biological curiosity. It was a beacon of hope, a potential key to humanity's survival. But Ellie's existence also raised profound questions. Was she a genetic fluke, a 1 in a billion mutation, or was her immunity evidence of something deeper, perhaps even cordyceps' own evolution? Scientists who studied Ellie's blood found that her body produced unique enzymes capable of neutralizing the fungal infection. These enzymes blocked cordyceps from taking root in her brain, effectively rendering her immune. Yet despite their efforts, the fireflies, the last bastion of scientific research, were unable to synthesize a cure from her immunity. They believed the only way forward was to extract the fungus from her brain, a process that would kill her. But Ellie's immunity wasn't just a scientific marvel, it was a philosophical dilemma. For Joel, Ellie was a surrogate daughter, a chance to redeem himself after the loss of his own child. His decision to save her at the expense of humanity's hope for a cure was deeply personal, an act of love that condemned the world to continued suffering. For Ellie, the knowledge of this choice became a burden she could never fully escape. Ellie's immunity also raised disturbing implications about cordyceps itself. Was she an accident of evolution, or was her immunity part of the fungus's grand design? Some survivors speculated that cordyceps had intentionally allowed for the possibility of immunity, a way to coexist with humanity rather than destroy it. After all, cordyceps didn't simply kill its hosts, it transformed them, reshaping them into tools for its survival. Could Ellie's immunity be another form of transformation, one that allowed cordyceps to integrate with humanity on a genetic level? And if Ellie wasn't the only immune individual, what did that mean for the future? Could immunity spread through reproduction, creating a new generation resistant to the infection? Or was Ellie's immunity a dead end, a fleeting glimpse of hope in a world doomed to decay? The Fireflies saw Ellie as the key to humanity's salvation, but their vision was narrow. They sought to cure the infection, to erase cordyceps from the world entirely. Yet some survivors argued that this was impossible, that cordyceps had already become part of the world's new ecosystem. Ellie's immunity wasn't just a cure, it was a bridge between the old world and the new. In Ellie, the line between humanity and cordyceps blurred. Her blood carried the potential to save the world, but it also carried the potential to redefine it. As she journeyed through the ruins of civilization, she became more than a survivor. She became a symbol of humanity's resilience and of its uncertain future. As humanity fell, cordyceps rose, not merely as a plague, but as the architect of a new ecosystem. Cities that were once the pinnacle of human achievement became overgrown ruins, their concrete and steel skeletons swallowed by fungal growths. Skyscrapers collapsed under the weight of vines, entire neighborhoods were blanketed in spores, and nature reclaimed the land faster than anyone could have imagined. Cordyceps wasn't just eradicating humanity, it was reshaping the planet. The fungal infection turned every environment it touched into an extension of its will. Buildings became fungal fortresses, their interiors darkened by spore clouds and lined with grotesque fungal growths that resembled veins and arteries. Entire regions were declared uninhabitable, sealed off not just because of the infected, but because the air itself was toxic, laced with microscopic spores waiting to latch onto new hosts. Survivors began to see cordyceps as more than a disease. It was a force of nature, undoing humanity's dominance and restoring balance in its own horrifying way. Wildlife thrived in the absence of human interference, and many survivors remarked on the eerie beauty of the post-apocalyptic world. Deer roamed the streets of once bustling cities, while birds nested in the remains of skyscrapers. But even this wildlife was not immune to cordyceps' touch. Rumors circulated of infected animals, dogs, rats, even large predators, twisted by the fungus in ways that made them more dangerous than the human infected. Cordyceps's influence extended far beyond its immediate hosts. The air became heavy with its spores, and the land was scarred by its growth. Survivors who ventured into infected zones often returned with fungal burns on their skin or lungs filled with spores, even if they managed to avoid direct infection. These areas were seen as sacred by some and cursed by others. To the desperate, they were places to scavenge for supplies. To the wise, they were death traps. Yet, even as cordyceps consumed the world, questions lingered. Was this transformation random, or was there a purpose behind it? Some survivors believed cordyceps was actively cultivating the planet, turning it into a more hospitable environment for itself. The patterns of fungal growth, the way it spread and adapted, seemed too precise to be mere coincidence. Humanity's greatest triumphs, its cities, its infrastructure, its technology, were now monuments to its downfall, and as cordyceps spread, it became clear that the fungus wasn't just surviving, it was thriving, turning Earth into a world where humanity was no longer the dominant species. The cordyceps brain infection didn't just destroy the world, it fractured humanity itself. Survivors splintered into factions, each responding to the apocalypse in its own way, and their divisions were as deadly as the infected. In the early days of the outbreak, quarantine zones, QZs, were humanity's last attempt at order. Overseen by military forces, these zones quickly became symbols of oppression rather than sanctuary. Life inside was harsh, resources were scarce, freedoms were restricted, and any sign of infection was met with swift execution. The military's iron grip turned survivors into prisoners, fueling resentment and rebellion. The Fireflies emerged as a response to this tyranny. They were more than just a resistance group. They were idealists, scientists, and freedom fighters united by the belief that humanity could rise again. But their methods were far from noble. Desperate for a cure, they conducted experiments on infected individuals and even on the living. To the Fireflies, cordyceps was not just an enemy, but a puzzle to be solved, a challenge that could restore their faith in humanity's ability to triumph over nature. Outside the QZs, lawlessness reigned. Raiders and hunters thrived in the ruins, preying on the weak and carving out brutal empires in the wilderness. They embraced chaos, living by the philosophy that survival justified any action. To them, cordyceps was not an enemy, but a force to be exploited. Some even harvested infected bodies, selling their remains as weapons or tools to other survivors. But perhaps the most unsettling response to cordyceps came from the Seraphites, or Scars. This fanatical cult viewed the fungal plague as divine retribution, a punishment for humanity's arrogance. They believed cordyceps was a purifier, a force sent by a higher power to restore balance to the world. Their rituals involved self-mutilation, chants, and sacrifices, all in reverence of what they saw as nature's judgment. These factions weren't just survival strategies, they were reflections of humanity's fractured psyche. Each group interpreted cordyceps differently, projecting their fears, hopes, and beliefs onto the infection. For the Fireflies, it was a challenge to overcome. For the Hunters, it was an obstacle to exploit. For the Seraphites, it was a god to worship. The divisions among survivors made it clear that cordyceps had done more than decimate humanity. It had revealed humanity's true nature, resilient yet fractured, capable of both hope and brutality. And as these factions fought for control, cordyceps continued its silent conquest, untouched by their struggles. Survivors often wondered, was cordyceps truly the enemy, or was it simply nature reclaiming its place? In the end, it didn't matter. Humanity's fight against the fungus was secondary to its fight against itself. The cordyceps brain infection was never simply a disease. To many survivors, it became clear that cordyceps was something far more profound, a force of nature, a reclaimer, or perhaps even a god. It did not merely consume, it transformed. It did not destroy, it created. And as humanity grappled with its survival, the ultimate question lingered. What was Cordyceps's purpose? The infected themselves hinted at this purpose. Each stage of the infection represented a calculated adaptation, as if Cordyceps was perfecting its design. The runners, stalkers, clickers, and bloaters weren't just monsters. They were tools, each serving a specific function in the fungus's ecosystem. Survivors who studied the infected noticed patterns in their behavior. They attacked with precision, defended spore zones with ferocity, and often congregated in areas rich with fungal growths. It was almost as if Cordyceps was organizing its infected into a network, each host serving the larger organism. But Cordyceps's ambitions extended beyond its hosts. The environment itself became a reflection of its power. Infected zones grew denser with each passing year, with fungal growths consuming entire landscapes. Buildings crumbled under the weight of Cordyceps's expansion, while spores filled the air like an invisible plague. Survivors who ventured into these areas often described an overwhelming sense of dread, as if they were stepping into Cordyceps's domain, a world where humanity no longer belonged. Ellie's immunity added a new layer of complexity to the infection story. If Cordyceps could create a host immune to its effects, did that mean it sought coexistence rather than eradication? Some survivors theorized that Ellie represented the next step in Cordyceps's evolution, a bridge between humanity and the fungus. Perhaps Cordyceps had grown beyond its parasitic origins, seeking to integrate itself into the very species it had conquered. And yet Cordyceps's true nature remained a mystery. Was it a mindless force, driven solely by instinct, or did it possess a form of intelligence, a will guiding its actions? The infected showed no signs of individuality, yet their collective behavior suggested a greater design. Survivors often debated whether Cordyceps was a hive mind, controlling its hosts with a singular purpose. If so, what was that purpose? Was Cordyceps content to dominate the earth, or did it have greater ambitions? The survivors who pondered these questions often found themselves staring into the void. To understand Cordyceps was to confront humanity's insignificance in the face of nature's power. The infection was not evil, it was simply life, thriving in the ruins of a world humanity had left behind. Its endgame, if it had one, was beyond human comprehension. In the end, Cordyceps's story was not about the fungus itself, but about what it revealed about humanity. The infection stripped away the veneer of civilization, exposing humanity's capacity for both hope and despair, love and brutality. It forced survivors to confront the fragility of their existence and the resilience of life itself. Perhaps the most haunting realization was that Cordyceps had already won. It had reshaped the planet, forged a new ecosystem, and rewritten the rules of survival. Humanity's fight against the infection was, in many ways, a fight against its own irrelevance. And as the years passed, one question remained. Would humanity adapt, or would it fade into the background, just another chapter in Cordyceps's story of life and ruin?